I mean, Mr. Secretary, you and I have been friends for a very long time. A sense of urgency is what I'm asking for right now. That every day that we delay or that we don't plow through the line of defense here, that's stopping this from happening. People are dying. I know you, and I know we can do better. And as you and I both were taught back in the days we were playing football, if better is possible, good is not enough.
Today on Capitol Hill, a congressional hearing between Senator Cory Booker and Secretary Marco Rubio was more than a standard congressional exchange. It was a revealing, emotionally charged conversation about America's role in addressing one of the greatest humanitarian disasters of our time, the ongoing genocide and humanitarian crisis in Sudan. Booker didn't shy away from that uncomfortable truth when he confronted Rubio about the UAE's involvement in supporting armed factions accused of genocide. That's what accountability looks like in diplomacy, having the courage to call out hypocrisy, even when it involves a strategic partner.
To be pushing a bill right now that would add $2.7 trillion to our national debt is just outrageous. And I've been grateful for the small group of Republicans here in the Senate and a number in the House who have just called this out as plain as it is. To do this now will shake America's economy, give tax breaks to the wealthiest amongst us who are doing quite well, and not help with the current economic crisis we're facing. But that's frankly just something I don't want to talk about right now. But I really want to just continue our conversation about Sudan. And I know you know, as was said passionately by one of my colleagues, the gravity of the crisis that's over there. Full stop. It's the greatest humanitarian crisis on the planet Earth. There's ethnic cleansing going on, an active genocide as described by our own government and others. And people are fleeing right now with the recent tax on Zamzam and more, but I know you're very aware of this. What I want to ask you about specifically is that not only did you acknowledge the genocide and say, I quote, being backed by countries that we consider allies elsewhere in the world, this is being fueled, you were saying, we must draw a clear line on that. You specifically mentioned the UAE, and you said, and I quote, take UAE, for example, they are an important partner in the Middle East, but we must be clear they are currently supporting an entity that is carrying out genocide. I'm just wondering, have you been able to draw that clear line in your conversations with the UAE, specifically addressing the issue of the supplying of arms?
Well, again, and I wasn't satisfied when people would answer this way when I was sitting on that side, but now on this side with diplomacy, you always want to be careful what you say publicly, because then people don't want to talk to you if they think it's going to happen in the future. Let me say this, we have expressed, not just to the UAE, but to other countries, that they are turning it into a proxy war, that it's destabilizing the region, that in fact it's creating an environment, not just in Sudan, but it's threatening to destabilize. I mean, South Sudan already faces pretty substantial challenges, but some of that threatens to spill over and make it even worse.
If I can interrupt, Marco, because I think your answer is justifiable. The UAE is a vital ally to the United States and a lot of other critical areas of the world.
But it doesn't serve their interest. But my point is, it doesn't serve the interest of some of these countries involved to continue to pursue this route, because instability there is going to create a breeding nest for
And I guess what my hope is,
radicalism.
and I know you and I can have further conversations privately, is that we are pressing hard on those people that are fueling the conflict. But I want to ask the next part of this question is, the U.S. leadership is critical to end this. This is actually something that we can achieve, not only alleviation of the suffering, but an end of this. If a humanitarian corridor is created and respected, this is something we can help to do. Finding diplomatic resolution to the conflict is something we can do. Now, there's a bipartisan commitment in this committee, mandate to appoint a special envoy for Sudan. We know that that kind of leadership can help address this the worst crisis on the globe. Time is not in our favor. Are you going to get a special envoy appointed, as colleagues on both sides of this aisle want to happen?
We do. We want to. We'd love to have somebody in charge of that. You know, we have a similar arrangement with DRC, Rwanda, and have seen it play dividends.
Mr. Secretary, all I'm looking for is a sense of urgency and an answer yes.
Yes, the answer is, but we have to find the right person, okay. And that's the challenge.
Next, 30 million people in Sudan require humanitarian assistance. In February, it was reported that, and you heard this passionately, that the freeze in humanitarian assistance is causing untold suffering. I was there myself in Chad last year and saw the role that we were playing. And frankly, I saw how great American companies like Plumpy Nut here were doing good, a double bottom line. They were helping to alleviate the crisis over there, as well as helping American businesses here. I just am hoping that you can say that you will commit to resume and even surge United States humanitarian assistance, particularly food aid, as soon as humanly as possible.
Well, all of that has been approved. All of the life-saving food and medicine programs have been turned on. To the extent that there's been impediments, has been one or two things. Either A, on the payment system front, where we faced a couple of weeks where we couldn't get money moving through Treasury because of a variety of different reasons, including changes to the technology, but that's largely been resolved. And the other is the ability to distribute it once the aid arrives at site.
Sudan is suffering one of the worst crises on the planet. Millions displaced, countless lives lost, famine spreading, and children starving. The atrocities are not abstract. They are real, they are happening right now, and they are being fueled by global powers, some of whom are U.S. allies.
I want to move to my next question for you. Is the refugee camps, the U.S. main corridor to life-saving assistance, which I said to you I visited, I'm just hoping that we can make sure that we are doing more. And I'll be specific in an example of another area. Despite the escalating humanitarian crisis, the United Nations Humanitarian Air Service is vital. The termination of those flights, makes it likely that all of Chad's aid into Chad will stop and end, and they will have no resources by the end of July. It can take a week to reach Chad's border from the capital via motorcade. And so this is a vital lifeline that we were supporting. During the rainy season, you can't make that trip by road at all. And I know, again, that you know this. Why was the award terminated for these flights? It is, to me, this is just very plain. This is the lifeline. And it was denied a waiver, which we reached out for. It's just, again, a very plain way that we could save lives. And I'm not sure if it's just because it had the UN in the title, but can we get a resumption of these flights that will literally save lives by getting resources?
Well, I think the answer to your question is that while you were talking about a mode of transport versus the actual aid, and I understand how important that is, then the question is what percentage of responsibility the United States should bear in comparison to other countries that have capability and are actually closer to the problem. So there's a broader issue here, and that is there does come a point at which we have to understand that the United States, there's great causes all over the world, and I'm not speaking specifically about the flight because I owe you a specific answer on that question. I don't recall that waiver. I don't recall the denial.
Marco, that's all. Excuse me, Mr. Secretary. That's all I'm looking for.
But all I want you to understand is that not every program we've ever funded is going to be funded in the future because we have to balance these things.
Mr. Secretary, I am aware of that. I just want an answer. I mean, there are. This is like Schindler's List. Doing a little more saves lives, and I know we are more capable than we are right now, and I'm asking for that answer.
I'll get you the answer on the flights.
And the flights and some of the other things I mentioned, and I'm happy to work with you on the special envoy. There are people on both sides that are willing to do that. And I'll say in conclusion, because I'm over, but other people did, I do not want to lecture you, especially because I know I've had enough conversations that I know your moral core. But what my colleague brought up very passionately about the Afrikaners, I want you to know as a person that talks to countries and leaders like you do all over Africa, they are already seeing us not prioritizing ambassadors. They see embassies being closed. But the torrent I got on the Afrikaners reminded me of the torrent I got from African leaders when the president called those countries like those in Africa shithole countries. The anguish and the anger and the disappointment and the feeling of double standards. So just from a diplomatic range, where we're in a competition in many ways on that continent that you and I talked in your confirmation hearings about the profound moral urgencies, economic opportunity, security mandates, the cooperations with its countries. We have got to do a better job, in my opinion, and I've worked with you on these issues when you were a senator, diplomatically in prioritizing these issues. And I will partner with you in any way possible to make sure that we are addressing what I believe is a diplomatic shortfall right now in advancing American interests on the continent.
If I might just real quick, we haven't closed any embassies, so I think people are responding to like articles talking about the potential for embassy closures and things of that nature, but we haven't closed any embassies, and we have been engaged. Listen, Africa, to me, is one of the priorities that I've set for us in terms of our global view because of the opportunities, because of the youth of the continent, because of explosive growth that we're going to foresee. And as an example of it, one of the things we prioritized, which a lot of people thought was intractable, was trying to reach a peace agreement between the DRC and Rwanda. Now, it's not done, but we brought them both here to Washington, D.C. about a month ago. They signed a memorandum of understanding. The negotiations are moving forward. They're actually moving forward very well. Our hope is to arrive at a peace deal there that ultimately ends what was turning out to be a very brutal and difficult conflict. So I take your point on Sudan and the need for an envoy. We would love to find the right person to handle that portfolio, because it has to be the right person. And we have played a supportive role. For example, the UK, about a month and a half ago, led a Sudan summit in London for a day, where a lot of other countries, we sent someone, we've offered to be helpful and work with them on it. But a lot of other countries either didn't make commitments or didn't live up to the commitments. The summit sort of was a minor disappointment, because while everyone talks a big game around the world about it, they're not stepping up. But I take your point. I'll get you your answer on the flights, because I'm not aware of that specific waiver. And on the envoy, we'd love to work with you to find the right person.
And the ambassadors and other things, I'll reach out to your office on.
Booker's tone throughout was not combative. It was urgent, moral, and deeply human. He wasn't trying to score political points. He was pleading for compassion, for leadership, for action that reflects America's moral responsibility on the world stage. When Booker says, "If better is possible, good is not enough," that isn't just a line. It's a statement about values. It's a challenge to complacency, not only in our foreign policy, but in how we define America's global character. Rubio, for his part, walked a delicate line. His responses were measured and bureaucratic, emphasizing diplomacy, discretion, and the need to find the right person for roles like the special envoy to Sudan. That's the kind of phrasing we often hear from Washington, a language of caution, not conviction. Booker was pushing past that, demanding not just talk, but tangible urgency. Because every day lost in paperwork or political hesitation costs real human lives. What makes Booker's intervention so important is how he connects foreign policy to moral clarity. He understands that American leadership isn't just about strategic interests, it's about moral influence. The rest of the world, especially nations in Africa, sees how we act or fail to act when people are dying. Booker's frustration with how Africa is often deprioritized in American diplomacy was palpable. He reminded Rubio that embassies left understaffed or talks of closures send a message of neglect, especially to a continent that's young, rapidly growing, and geopolitically vital. And there's a deeper point here. The United States is in a competition not just for economic or military dominance, but for moral credibility. When African leaders see us turn away or apply double standards, when we condemn violence in one region but ignore suffering in another, they lose faith in American integrity. Booker understands that moral consistency is not weakness, it's power. By invoking analogies like Schindler's List, Booker reminded Rubio, and all of us, that even small actions matter. That saving a few more lives is not symbolic, it's sacred. His argument was not partisan, it was profoundly human. He was appealing to Rubio's conscience, not just his policy brief. Rubio's promise to get the answer and to work with both sides on finding the right envoy is fine. But Booker's message lingers. Words without urgency are empty. America has the power, the influence, and the moral obligation to do better. And that means leading, not following, when it comes to humanitarian crises. This exchange tells us something critical about leadership. True leadership isn't about managing optics, it's about facing ugly truths and acting before it's politically convenient. Booker reminded us that foreign policy is not just strategy, it's empathy at scale. And until our actions reflect that, our words will continue to ring hollow. This is the kind of dialogue we need more of in Washington. Leaders demanding accountability not only from adversaries but from allies, and insisting that America's foreign policy be guided by humanity, not hesitation. Because when genocide is unfolding and millions are starving, the question isn't if we should act, it's how quickly we can. Call to action. Stay informed. Speak out about Sudan. Pressure your representatives to prioritize humanitarian aid and the appointment of a U.S. Special Envoy. Silence helps the oppressors. Awareness and advocacy save lives.